Okay, so so the basic things that we will need is actually to run this application. I will have a terminal turned on. Let me get my terminal to the other window. Okay, so to get started with web development, I would recommend you guys to have Node installed. So if you have Node installed like me, I have like kind of a latest version 19, I suppose. So make sure you guys have Node installed within your machine. Otherwise, the things what we're going to do is not going to work as expected. Okay, so Node is a prerequisite to this course, and it's very simple, guys. So just drag and drop things, and you will get Node installed in no time. And the things that we're going to be focusing on within this course is it's basically we will be looking into developing mobile application, web-based mobile applications. That means it's not like the native applications that we used to see. The native applications are utilizing most of the things related to the smartphone industry. So for example, we developed native Android applications. We developed native iOS application, which are fairly binded to their ecosystem. For example, if you want to develop a native Android application, we will probably use something like Kotlin, Java, or if you are using hybrid frameworks, we can use like something Flutter, which comes with Dart or something like that. So those kind of frameworks and those kind of native developments, those mainly focusing on features that you will find on your smartphone. So if you're going to iOS, the same thing. You need Xcode, which you can write applications using Swift or Objective-C, frameworks like Swift UI. So those things are going to be utilizing your mobile application. But when it is come to web, web is not limited to mobile, but recent years, at the explosion of mobiles, smartphones, and its affordability, a lot of people are coming from mobile-based devices. Okay, so if you take the browsing time of an average person, they tend to have more time or more experience with their browsings solely based on what we call the mobile webs. Okay, so whenever we are developing applications, we are in this course we are calling applications as in web applications, not mobile applications. As in web applications, make sure your app is running smoothly within mobiles. Okay, if you have applications which will like get stuck on the middle, then you're doing something wrong. Okay, you have to be very precise, very careful, and there are certain things which a desktop has, and there are certain things a mobile has. So you have to be very careful to address those things, since it is a multi-platform area. The web is multi-platform. The behavior based on the desktop and based on your mobile is going to differ. So make sure we address those issues, especially the limitations that we will find in the mobile. The mobile has a limited area of visibility. The screen that we are seeing, most of the time it is few 6 inches or something like that, this most of the displays. But in a desktop you can get around like 14-inch to way around like 20 inches or 32 inches space screens. But the screen size is one of the most important thing that we need to focus when we are developing a web application. Okay, but if you take a mobile application, I'm talking about native or hybrid mobile application, we do not care about that much the size or term of visible area, because we know it's ultimately it's going to be a handheld device. So we can safely ignore some portion of it, but not totally. But in web, we have to be really careful on how we're gonna address those things. And the next thing is, sorry guys. The next thing is we need to think about the resources availability. Okay, so when you're developing a mobile application, the mobile application, I'm talking about native applications. Native applications have a lot of capabilities and access to the native device itself. For example, if you want to access the microphone, we can define some permission within our application, and we can ask the user to give the permission, and we can work with that. But if you are developing a mobile, not a web application, there can be tricky parts. There are certain APIs that we can access, but there are certain tricky things that we need to know in order to make sure that is perfect. Even playing a sound from a native application seems to be simple, but when you are doing it in web and when you are doing it in a mobile, there are tricky parts to handle. Okay. Not all the APIs available in a native application is accessible within a web application. That is not possible. Most of the things that we do is not going to be able to access. That's primarily because when we are running the application, when we are running a web application, it's going to be running through something what we call a web browser. Okay, within your mobile, you will find a web browser, something like Chrome, Safari, Opera, Firefox, whatever you name it, or the Google or Android default browser. Anything that is capable of saving a web page will be used to render your pages. So when we are rendering those things, we are accessing the phone, we are accessing the underlying hardware through a browser. So if the browser has certain limitation APIs with the device, of course, we have certain limitation from the web page as well. The browser is like standing in the middle of our application. So we have to make sure we know the certain limitation, certain things that we can do and we cannot do within the web application. So we learn all these things by doing a certain set of examples. As of now, let's keep in mind what are the limitations that we have spoken earlier, especially with the screen, memory, or resources in this case, and certain things are unique to mobile, like orientation. For example, most of the time you will browse your if you're browsing from your laptop, you will browse like you put it on top of your lap or your desk and you will be browsing. But when you are browsing through your phone, you can tilt it anytime. Okay, you can rotate and you will get a different screen. So we need to make sure your application, your web application does not break when your phone is rotated 90 degrees. Okay, so we have to make sure those kind of things has been addressed as well. That's like important stuff when it is developing a web application, not like a normal phone application. Okay, so hope we'll have a different set of how do you call challenges when it is coming to developing mobile applications, web-based mobile application rather than a native-based one. We'll also talk about things related to testing. Obviously, it's a good part that we need to cover. It's quite similar to what we have done on native mobile applications, but there are certain things we can do more. We'll be covering backend integration, API integration, state management, how these things are done. If you guys can remember the MVVM pattern, we'll find something similar in here, not quite the MVVM, but something similar. That is like MVC pattern, those sort of things. It's up to you how to categorize these things. It's up to you to learn other things around it. I will be covering certain frameworks in here. Mostly I'll be focusing on Angular and React for the front end. For the back end, we will be using Node.js based Nest.js. Okay, Nest.js is one of the popular ones that you will see. So if you if you're coming from TypeScript, you will find these things pretty much easy. Especially if you are also, since we have done Kotlin, TypeScript is so somewhat similar to Kotlin, not all the time, but they have the similarities. I think all the modern languages nowadays have the similar concepts and similar keywords even. So don't worry, the languages are really easy to learn. Anything else that you guys might think a value addition to what we are doing, so I can set the pace. So if you have any suggestions, please let me know so we can focus on those things. Earlier, I think if you look at the previous lecture series, a lot of inputs were given from the students. So based on that, I changed the directions and some of the content that I have initially planned, because it's up to you guys. It's up to you guys to do the good, get the most out of it. So if you need something to place in, we can take a look at it and include within the course itself. Okay. So any questions up until this, guys? I hope nothing that much huge. Any questions? Bhagya?
No, sir.
Okay. So, Abdullah?
No, sir.
Okay, cool. So let's start coding. There is this concept when we are creating an application, especially a web application, starting the application is the most crucial part. So a lot of frameworks are out there. Most of the people, I don't find themselves starting from the index HTML and applying every CSS, setting up the TypeScript, everything. That's like an old school thing. Okay. I do not expect you guys to do it unless you come into any huge issue with the framework or something like that. Most of the time we use toolings. We use toolings to bootstrap our application. Okay, so you don't have to start from the scratch unless it is some weird request. Most of the time, 99% of the time, I would recommend to use some sort of CLI tool or something like that in order to work with the setup. Okay, so your application can be created using CLI tools. So I find myself, there is one particular tool that's going to help a lot with your work, that is called NX. Okay, so NX is one of the monorepo tools that I have been using for a couple of years now, and it's great. Okay, so NX is kind of we call it a monorepo tool. That means you can create multiple applications within your single project. Okay, so I am in one of the projects, and I have installed NX in my machine. So if you haven't installed NX, it's a simple command. You can say, if I'm not mistaken, npm install NX or something like that. Okay, you can always go to the official documentation. Let me open one for you guys. NX tools. Yes. NX.dev. You can create using npx as well. So if you have installed Not, you will get something called npm, Not Package Manager, which is something similar to Gradle, since we are coming from mobile side. So npm is like a package manager. Not is this server. Npm is not package manager. Npm. So using npm, we can download these tools, we can install those things within our application, and so on and so forth. So we have something called npx. Okay, so npx is like a temporary not package manager. Npm, what it does is it's gonna store some things, but npx it's gonna fetch things on the way and set up your applications. So if you want to create an NX workspace, okay, like I do, what you have to do is you can use this npx create workspace, or you can install the NX tools and create from that. So either way, you're going to be creating something called a workspace. Okay, the workspace contain your project. Within this project, we'll be focusing on two things. So we will have a front end as well as a back end in one single code repo. Okay, so within one single workspace, we can have the front end as well as the back end. I'll show you guys what are the advantages and disadvantages of doing such a thing. To having such a thing in a single workspace or a single repository, we call those things as monorepos. Okay, so monorepos are one of the cool thing that you guys can do. It's used in a lot of application developments within organizations as well. I have heard that Google is even using everything in a monorepo. So we can utilize that. So when we are using a tool like NX, it's going to create us a monorepo. So we can create our front end and back end in the same application. So that is awesome in so many different ways. And it's going to make our lives pretty much a lot of easier when it is coming to developing front end and back end application all together. We'll see how these things gonna change the way we think about the application, as well as how it's gonna save us a lot of time rather than having two different separate application for backend and front end in two different repos. Okay, we'll use the same monorepo, and using the monorepo, we can create one singular application. Okay, NX has changed. A lot of things have changed. So I'm going to dive in directly. There can be changes along the way. We will just adapt to it as we always do. So yeah, first thing is that we will be using to create a workspace. I will use this npx command, npx create NX workspace with the latest version. Most probably I need to give what do you call name for this workspace. So I can give the course content, course name at least. 41293 underscore 2023. Okay, so the next thing is that NX workspace will be created, but make sure you have a hard disk that can download some files, because it's going to be huge. Okay, so if you I'll proceed with a yes. Okay, because remember, when we are creating this application, it's going to download a lot of node modules. Node modules in the sense, those are the things like the libraries that we use. If you can remember, like when we are using Gradle, we have dependencies. So as this, so when we are creating an application, it's gonna get a lot of things included in the application. So with NX, you have a few choices that you can do. Okay, you can create you can create an empty space. Okay, so there is no specific framework or technology, or you can create a JavaScript based package thing without framework, or you can create a React application, or you can create an Angular application, or you can create just a Node application. So today, don't worry about this. Since this is a monorepo, we can always add another one later on. We can have a React and an Angular application as well as a Node application in the same repository. It will work perfectly without any error. Okay, we'll be utilizing that, but for now, we have to make sure we are using one of these things. Later on, we can add any framework or anything tooling later on. Okay, don't worry about that. For now, I would go with Angular application. And the next thing is it's going to ask whether it's going to be a standalone, and it can create an integrated monorepo. So if I select a standalone application, what will happen is I will be only able to create an Angular application. I won't be able to add anything else, but that is not what I wanted. I will need to be creating a monorepo so I can fit in my backend, or if I need a React application to be pushed in here, I need to be able to do that. So I will create the integrated monorepo. Okay, so they are asking for an application name. On this matter, I have actually promised my brother to create an application for him. So he have given me a requirement. So I'll be creating that, and I'll be creating a real world application that you guys can also see in action, and my brother will get a free application out of it. So it's for his inventory system. He need an inventory system to be maintained. So let's see how we can create an inventory system using the web technologies that we have today. I will create his company is called Dil Agro, if I can remember. Yes, Dil Agro. So I will create the application as Dil Agro. So you can give it a whatever you name like. And the next thing is what is the styling that we like? So there are plain CSS, which I do not recommend because it's too much. Okay, we have other options like less and Sass. Okay, I would definitely go with Sass because it's quite easy. We will learn Sass. It's not like a new thing that you need to learn if you have learned CSS, but things are as CSS on superpower. Okay, so we have all the things that you need in CSS as well as some things extra added. So I'll go with Sass. Okay, and there is sorry, there is one thing this is something framework specific at this time of recording. The reason is it is asking, would you like to use standalone components? Okay, so standalone components is a new feature introduced by Angular version 14, if I can remember correctly. There is this new feature called standalone components. So basically, there are few concepts behind Angular. If you want to learn Angular, there are few concepts that you need to learn, especially components, modules, directives, pipes. Then there is services or injections. So there are like key 5 things that you need to learn. So that is one of the reasons I find myself Angular is a little bit complex, as well as it is perfect for huge enterprise applications. Okay, I'm not saying other frameworks are not enterprise ready or they are not capable of handling such application. No, I'm not meaning that. I'm just saying that the flexibility Angular gives is helping us to create more sophisticated applications. Okay, so we'll see, but we are not sticking to Angular at this point. This is something Angular specific. So they have introduced these standalone components. I will show. I think this will be the future, because they are ditching the concept called modules and coming to standalone components. So standalone components is something similar to what you will see in React components or Vue modules. So those things are like they don't like depend on other modules, that you don't have to define these things in a different module. It's just a way that you can define your component without any hassle. Okay, just for now, we will go with standalone components, because for sure, standalone components will continue in upcoming Angular versions, and it will make things a lot easier. Of course, there is new introductions. A lot of things have changed in recent Angular versions, especially Angular 15, 16. They have introduced a lot of new things. They're going to be going through a lot of changes. They are not bad. They are making things easy for new people like you and me to get in on board fairly quickly. The main reason most people complain that Angular has a learning curve. It's containing a lot of things. It's not easy to learn. Yeah, that's kind of true. But when you get the power of those things, it's really easy, really not that hard if you look at it. So don't worry, we will go these things in Angular as well as in React, and we will compare these things and choose is up to you. You're going to go with React, go ahead. If you want to go with Angular, go ahead. For now, to get things started, let's go with Angular, and we will move on to React later on. Okay, we'll learn React along the way. So I would go with standard components. Yes. Would you like routing? Yes. The main feature which comes with Angular itself, Angular is a framework. Okay, Angular is a framework. That means it's coming built-in capabilities such as routing, styling, components, and it gives us a way of defining a web application. The application definition is somewhat done for us. Okay, they give us best practices and all those things. So the framework, it has certain limitations on how we're gonna arrange our code. On the contrast, the most popular one out there, React, it is more loosely coupled, and React is not considered as a framework but as a library. Okay, the library in the sense, it's like what you can build upon React is up to you. React gives the basic fundamental things, but other things you have to introduce yourself, such as routing. If you need server-side rendering, all those things you have to do it yourself. That is the basic React. But there are new frameworks out there for React as well. So Next, Next, Next. Okay, Next.js, Remix.js, and there are some other popular frameworks which is built on top of React. Yes, they use the React underlying React library. On top of, they have used other components like routing, server-side rendering, all those things put together, and they have created the framework. Then we can use those things as well. If I think if I can remember correctly, NX also support these React frameworks like Next.js. But if you like, you can go plain React as well. But if you are in a hurry, if you want to develop something rapidly, I would not recommend to go with a plain React application. That is okay if you need more control over it, but most of the time a framework would really help with development time as well as achieving your goals. So I would differentiate the two in there. So Angular is a framework which have built-in functionalities and sophisticated things for you. React is a library which is like the fundamentals, so basic things are there. in this scenario, Angular comes with such things, and you can either enable these things, such as in here we are asked whether you need routing. Since it's going to be a little bit of complicated application, I would definitely go with routing. I would not go without routing. It's not going to add so much thing, because with routing, you can go one page to another page and those kind of things can happen. So I would definitely add routing. And enable distribution caching. This is something NX has provide. Okay, we will not going to use distributed caching at this moment. We'll see if we need NX caching later on. We will enable it, and you'll see the power of distributed caching. That means you don't need to build the whole application from ground. It will be really super fast. But for now, we won't be focusing on that. Okay, we'd say no to that. And there you go. So it is creating the basic application for us. And guys, it's going to take a little bit of time. Okay, not a few things. I have a bad internet connection for some reason, and it's going to get a whole lot of Node modules. But what we can do is we can take another console and start coding. So I'll be using Visual Studio Code. Okay, I think I need to go to the workspace that we created. Did we create it? CD still not, I suppose. Okay. Creating workspace. Okay. Should be up here. Okay, yeah. I will open it in my VS Code, and you'll guys see some of the things in here. There is lib, tools, apps. Still, it is generating, but let me walk through some of these things if you are new. So the package JSON, you can think this is as the Gradle build file. Sort of thing. So this is where all your dependencies coming on. So you can see, since I am using Angular, the NX Angular dependencies already here, and there are dev dependencies, such we have seen in what do you call in Android, not dev dependencies, but test dependencies kind of thing. So these dependencies will help while we are developing the application, not in the final product. Those things are not going to be in there. Especially things like TypeScript. Whenever we are using TypeScript, it's going to help us with the development. But when we want to finally ship this thing, TypeScript won't be understood by browsers. We need to convert it to JavaScript. So a TypeScript compiler will convert everything that we have written in TypeScript to JavaScript and ship along it. So no longer we need to have TypeScript within our application. That's why only during the development time we need TypeScript, and other time we can just ignore it. So we have dev dependencies here, and there's certain things in here that we need to know, that if you want to add a dependency for your application, just define it here, like we do in the build.gradle file, or something similar. So it's straightforward. You don't need to know like everything in here. Just the things that would make things easy for us. And the next thing that we will be talking about is the architecture of this application. And remember, this is something for NX workspaces only. Okay, if you were to choose something else, some other tools, for example, you can create an Angular application using Angular CLI. There is a command line tool called Angular CL, which you can create Angular application, but it is not gonna give you the monorepo and all those things. You can't have backend development, such a thing. So you can't have those things, but you can create an Angular application from that. And there are tools to create React applications, like Create React Application is one of the tools. You can use that. But As I mentioned, like Angular CLI, you don't have the monorepos. You can't mix in these things together. The exact architecture that NX come up with in here is unique to them. It's going to change a little bit, some versions to another, but most of the time this is the default application that I have seen so far. Okay, so you guys can see something popped up, node modules. These are all the dependencies that we're going to be using in here. You can see the package JSON still have only few, but our node module is going to get bigger and bigger. Okay, this is the least place that we will be visiting in our application. Don't worry about that. So we'll be not looking into node modules. Okay, think these things as like the dependencies for application, which we will not use unless something is wrong with the application. So you guys might have seen a meme. There is like there's a meme called the weight of the universe or something like that. Let me check. Weight of modules. I think there's a meme. Yeah. Heaviest objects in the universe, if I'm not mistaken. Probably you guys have seen this, but it's cool to have. Copy image address. So not sure that it is. Yeah. So if you take the heaviest objects in the universe, sun is there, a neutron star, a black hole, and you get node modules. So combining all those things together or comparing these things together, you can see that node module is the heaviest object in the world. That is true because it's take a lot of your memory and space in your machine. That's what I ask you. Please have a good hard disk to download these things. It's gonna sometimes it's taking in terms of GBs, okay, not MBs, most of the time GBs. So that depends on what you are developing, but have a good hard disk. And the next thing is that we need to talk about is these apps directory. So if you are creating an Angular application, it's gonna pop around here. So if we have an app, since we have created the DLagro application, sooner or later it's gonna pop up in here. So each and every application, whether it is backend, frontend, or React, or whatever the application that we're going to be creating, it's going to come up in the app section. So that's where all the applications are going to reside. And there is something called libs. Okay, this is one of the fundamental things with monorepo. That is the code sharing ability. Okay, so since our frontend and our backend is going to be utilizing TypeScript, there are certain classes that we can share. For example, let's take an interface. Okay, we have an interface called credentials. Okay, so the credential interface can contain email and password. So email is going to be a type of string, and we have password type of string as well. So if you want to create these kind of things in two separate applications, it's gonna have to reside on two different locations. One is you have to create in backend, the other one you have to create in the frontend. But the definition of that is going to be exactly the same. If you create it in Java, you have to create a credential interface in Java or Kotlin, and you have to create a credential interface in TypeScript as well. So all the things that we are creating, we can share these things. So we don't need to create the same interface, create the same classes in two different places. Okay. To avoid such a thing, what we can do is easily, we can have something called libraries. Okay. So a library is a way of sharing our code. Okay. So front-end has the credential, back-end has the credential. We will put that kind of code, a shareable code, in the library directory. And what we can do is we can share the code in front-end as well as in the back-end. Okay. So the good thing about it, if you change something in the front end, okay, the credential now have something called we need to have a Boolean field called remember me. Okay, now we have add that remember me in the credentials, and it will automatically will be reflected on the backend. Since we are sharing the code, it's going to be easy to the both party front end and the back end to know, okay, the model has changed. We need to act accordingly. Someone who's developing the back end knows, okay, they have introduced remember me functionality. We have to code on that. And in the front end, you have the same thing. You have introduced something and we have to change accordingly. So it's a nice way that we can share the codes and we can see what's going on in there, and it will make our life easier when we are doing huge projects. Okay, and remember, in a monorepo, you can have more than one project. Okay, more than one project. So for example, let's say we are going to develop a simple stock management system. Okay, but we are also in the middle of developing a huge ERP system. Okay, we can create the ERP system in a separate app as well. And also we can share the libraries and share the code among the small application and the bigger application. Okay, so we can have multiple applications and those multiple applications can share the code. This shared code, what will happen is you can utilize within the all of your projects. Okay, if you have one single project and you can share this code, and if you have multiple projects that will utilize the same thing, you can use that. I will give you a real world example on it. So for example, we have created a new UI library. Okay, UI library, which means it's going to give us a new way of developing buttons or new way of developing input. Okay, so within our company projects, within our workspace project, we can share that same generated UI component in multiple projects. And only one place we have to change, and each and every project will get that update. So it will be easy to manage huge scale of applications where you have a lot of things to be shared. Okay, especially things like libraries, like UI libraries, model libraries, and there are certain actions. We'll get all those things in here and we will see it in action. Right now, remember, code sharing will make a lot of easier when we have these things installed in a monorepo. Okay. Okay. Still failed to create workspace and warning deprecated source map code. Oh, okay. That is new. What happened? Creating your workspace, failed to create workspace. Can I create it again? Angular. SAS. Yes. Yes. No. Okay, that is new. Something to do with the failed to create workspace. Not done entity. Of course, it is not done here. RMRF. CG. I'll remove that and I'll try to create once again. Integrated monorepo. Deal aggro. Okay. SAS. Standard components, routing. No. Creating, let's see. Sometimes this can happen basically if the workspace latest version, see we are using NX workspace latest. If something goes with the latest version like 16.51, then it might lead us to some issues while we are creating, but let's give it one more try. If it does not, we can always downgrade to a working version. Then we will try it again. Okay. Let me check whether I have any issues with this NX version. NX not creating issue in nothing that can see on first go. This is paid migration. We are not doing a migration since we are creating something brand new. Any questions up until this, guys? Till this workspace thing is getting on? Guys can also check, right? Check. Okay. Anything up until this? So basically we did just create an empty application. We did not run it even. Let's try to get it running first, so you guys can see something. So anyone have heard about NX or these CLI tools beforehand? Anyone have used such a thing? Raise your hand, please. I have used a scaffolding tool like NX or yeah, something wrong with this. I think I have to create not from the latest version, but from earlier on version. Workspace. Let me get a working workspace number, so I'm not wasting more time. Let me look. What is this project? I have a couple of projects. Give me a second, guys. I will extends. Okay. What is the version that I am using for this? NX workspace. Oh, it's 16. That's weird. I'm using the same workspace in here. Let me check what is this error again. NX. Something related to create workspace. Can't create first latest open issue on March 8. Is this step to reproduce? Okay. There seems to be an issue with that. Can someone? They should be fixed now. And not hash native not relevant. No. It's an old issue. Seems to be not related to this. So let me create with MPX without the latest. Sorry. Clear. I'll create with something like 16.50 or maybe for sure 40. Create, yes. Would you like to create the workspace name? Yes, I would like SMG. Maybe is it the name? Or I would use something shorter. Can be issue with the namespace, not sure. I'll use Angular, integrate monorepo, deal grow, okay, SAS, standard component, yes, no. Let's see if it goes again. But we are using a dial down version, not the latest one. Like I have used 16.5.1 for me. To be in the safe side, I am using 16.4.0. Maybe something to do with the workspace name. I don't know. Maybe I have a dash in there. Let's see whether it's gonna appear again. If so, then we have to find another way. Creating your workspace. cd_smg. I will start coding from here. Still nothing. At least we don't get an error. So yep, let's hope it works at least this time. Okay, yeah, great, it's working. So you guys can see that I'm not sure whether you guys can see it clearly. Do I need to zoom in a little bit more, or is this comfortable enough for your eyesight? Do you need me to zoom in? Can you guys see the thing? Yeah.
Oh, it's all right, sir. Can see.
Can see, right? Everybody's okay, right? Yeah, same problem came to Sisita as well. So sorry, Sisita, I think maybe it's the name. I'm not sure. The workspace name, we had a dash before that, or the version that we have used. The latest version might have some bugs. That happens. So we dial it down for 16.4 version and it should work. I think it is working right now. So no need to be worried about that. If it's still that persists, let's have a debugging session around it. Okay, if you guys come across the issue again and again, let's do a debugging session. Okay, so for now, it creates two apps by default. One is Dilagro and Dilagro E2E. So this thing automatically create end-to-end application for testing for us. Okay, we don't have to set up end-to-end applications. We can have end-to-end application created by default for us. Okay, we'll look into this when we are going to more into what do you call it, testing set. Right now we'll be focusing on this section, Dilagro. Okay, and node module, as we talked, lib is still empty. Tools is also something that we might talk. It's something specific to NX, so we might not talk about it. It's like some supporting tools that we can use. But we'll see what's availability on that. I mean, we will focus on that. So as I mentioned, guys, this is a thing that I can do for a long time, but as time permits, we will go and get things done much as quick as possible. So we have the package.json, and package.json is having Angular versions, and it's still installing some things. I think it is not completely done. Yes, it's still creating. We will give some time, but Meanwhile, it is creating. Let's do some housekeeping in here. As you guys can see here, these are a lot of things, configuration files. The pretty RC is like the pretty extension settings. Like when you are saving, it's gonna automatically make the code nice, look nice, and all those things. So it's these configuration just is the testing tool, the end-to-end testing tool, sorry, unit testing tool that we're going to be using. It has to be some, there should be some setting up done. By default, NX does this for us, so we don't have to set up just from the ground up for an Angular project. Okay, so you don't have to worry about setting these things up from the ground up, but these things are cluttering my view. Okay, these things are not the things that I am always interacting. So I find a neat trick in VS Code that I like to hide these things as much as possible. Okay, the README file, that is not the file that I am always going to be looking at. So I'll be definitely hiding these things. So in order to have a good picture of my project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to access the settings from my VS Code, and I will use the workspace settings. In here, I can search exclude files. Exclude. Yes. Then there is files exclusion, and I can say add a pattern. Okay, I can have something like a folder. So if I'm going to magically disappear this, I will say not underscore modules. And if I add this, what will happen? It's not going to remove it, but it's going to exclude it, showing in the VS Code. So if I go to this VS Code folder right now, and it is go to, if you go to settings section, and it is excluding not modules. Okay, so I don't see it anymore. Same goes to this dot files that I'm having. I don't need this to be seen in here. So what I can do is I can have another pattern in here. Something like this. I would say anything start with dot to be hidden. There you go. So anything start with dot magically disappear. Okay, but be careful. Some important files might get along the way, but now I just don't need these things to be shown in here. I don't need this configuration files to be shown here as well. So I will exclude those things as well. This configuration GS to be false. Config.ts. So it need to be true, so it does not show. Just preset. I don't need this to be shown in here as well. This is completely optional, guys, but it's gonna make things nice for me. So I'm gonna do it anyway. So the NX.json, one of the files that you would probably engage, but not often. This contains all the definitions about the projects and generators and all those things. This is like the schematic for the workspace, but it's something barely we use. So I'm gonna hide that one as well. So I'm gonna hide index.json to be true. Okay, I don't need this package log.json as well. Probably I will hide package.json as well. It's up to you. Most of the time, these things is not concerning my works. Let's keep tools hidden for now as well, because we are not interacting tools at this moment. Format document. Okay. For now, I will keep package.json, but feel free to remove it as well. I will remove md ps config.json. Yeah, why not? It's not something that I work every day. Also the VS Code. So I'm gonna hide it as well. I'm not gonna always edit that one. The VS Code, it's to be true. So if I close these things, there you go, nice and clean. I have lib directory and apps directory, and build that row even in here. I can hide these things. There are a couple of plugins that you can use in here. Of course, if you want to show these things, there is a plugin in here. You can always toggle and see these things, but I would keep things simple and hide it. Yeah, so if I want something within in here to be hidden as well, yeah, I can do that, but let's do it another time. For now, let's focus on our application. Okay, let me check whether the app is it's still creating. So let's give it some time. But let's look at the main application. As I mentioned earlier, this is the end-to-end, and this is the main application. And main application contain a folder called SRC, where all our source code is going to be. And one thing you will be familiar with is the index.html. This is where the starting point of our front-end application is going to be. And this is a typical Angular application. You will see the HTML, the body, and you will see the SNG root component. This is not a standard element in HTML like H1, P, or tags. This is a custom component. Okay, we call these things as custom components. We have this SNG 412309 root component. So this is the component that we will be working with. This is like the starting point of our application. Okay, for bootstrapping our application, this is like the main TS. This is like the starting point for our front-end application. But we are not gonna go into much detail about these files. These are like barely touched files. They are there, they are working. Unless there is something we need to change, we don't touch it. Okay, but it's a good practice. You know these things, but be careful when you are dealing with these things. These are like super sensitive files, if I may say. Okay, when you are changing these things, be sure what you do is not affecting the other things, and make sure you always git commit before you do that. Okay, so the next thing you would see is this app directory. This is where the most of the applications is going to reside. So in Angular, you will find these things like app configuration. And remember, this is because of we have created the standalone application. If you are using an older version, you might see something called app modules. Okay, app modules is the older version. Okay, where we have modules to register components. But since we are focusing on standalone components, you won't see any modules. For now, let's keep it as much as simple. So routes, this is where you're gonna see your pages. Okay, if you create page A to page B and you won't have the page B routes, you will define those things in here. We'll see how these things all come together. Right now, you guys can see that in the main in the index.html, we can see this SNG 41293 root tag, and the same thing is in app component under the selector. Okay, so what we can assume is this app component, this component, and it is all the things will be replaced around in here. Okay, so this is like the starting point of your application, and things will be rendered around here. So let's go to the component, and there are a few things that you will find in here, and coming from previous versions, this might be a little bit different. As I mentioned, we are using standalone components in our application, which means we no longer use modules. Okay, we had something called modules for registering and all those things. If you are interested in, please look at the previous lecture setup. It will give you an understanding of module structure. But in here, we are not gonna go in the module structure, but we're gonna be going in the standalone component structure. Okay, so component, as I mentioned earlier, these are what we call the direct what do you call these things? Not decorators. Decorators at component is a decorator from TypeScript, which kind of saying, okay, this is an Angular component. Okay, this is coming from Angular, and the component has some unique features and some customization. This is a standalone one. That is going to be true. If you are using older module version, you won't find this anywhere. At least if you are not setting standalone components. So this indicate, okay, this is an Angular component and it is a standalone one. And this one is importing few other components. Okay, it means we are using within this app component, we are using some other components. I mean, components can import other components. Those are need to be standalone as well, if you will see. And sometimes these can import modules such as the router module. We will look in how the router modules is working and so on and so forth. Right now, we have a router module set up. App routes, I don't think. Okay, app route is provided. Let's see how these things get together. Okay, for now, the app component is using another component, NX welcome component. Okay, this is the NX welcome component. Okay, it's a huge component. We will see in a little bit. And the selector is what we call the component name, the tag name that we are saying. So you can see that tag name is this. So to identify this component in HTML world, in example like SNG in our index HTML file. So this is the selector name which will be used in our HTML. Okay. And the next thing that you will see, the template URL. So what is the view of this component? The component have two or three sections. The view, the HTML part, how it is rendered out is defined by this template URL. So whenever somebody is looking at this app component, which is selected by this selector name, the view that they will be seeing is in this within this app.component.html file. So you can see that app.html component file, and it contains some tags that you will be familiar with. We will see these things in a little bit. Okay, so these tags are like not known tags for you guys, might be at the first class, but we will see these things as in a little bit, and we'll probably remove these things and start fresh. So now, whatever in this HTML file will be rendered out by the component. And this style, the styling of this application, you know, I mean, we are dealing with HTML. We often use styling sheet like CSS, CSS. So all the HTML styling along happens in this component is in this app component.css file. Okay. So whenever we want to style something, you type it in this here. Of course, you can do inline styling within the HTML, but to keep things nice and clean, we will use this separate styling sheet to work with. Okay. So the component has styles, component has a view, component has a selector, some dependencies, some imports of other components, and whether it is standalone or not. And there is a title called Delegro. We'll see these things, how we can bind within the application. Right now, those are all the things that we need to look at first glance. Okay. And as you guys can remember, in here, we have imported the NX welcome component. Let's have a look around it, and we will see a different way of writing a component. Okay, let's go there. You guys can see that it is having the same component definition as we did. And you can see that it's contained in a selector. The selector is SNG whatever and NX welcome. Okay, that is the selector. So if you look at this selector, you will find that in the app component HTML. Okay, you can see the same thing in NX welcome as you can see it in here. So you guys can see that this selector is used in here. So whenever we are referring the NX welcome component, we are referring by this selector name. So it will be rendered in here. So the NX welcome component is rendered in here. Okay, whatever we want to put in here, it's shown in here. So what is, it is a standalone one, and it is importing the common modules, which is, we will talk in a little bit later, some common functionalities in Angular. And you guys can see that in app component, we use something called app component HTML, which the template URL. Okay, this is the link for the view. But in here, you can see we are using something called template. Okay, you are not using template URL. We are not pointing to a separate HTML file. We are doing it inline. We are doing it in here with use of template. Okay, with the template, you can do the HTML coding all in here. Okay, the HTML coding, CSS coding, everything that is in here, which is not ideal from my point of view. But if you like to have everything in one single file, which stretch around 800 lines, go for it. Okay, and there is the styles, and where you can define your styles in here. Contrast to app component style URLs, you can say, okay, our styles will be in this CSS file, or you can specify those files as inlines like in here. But in here, there is no style utilization. I think, if I'm not mistaken, all are in the HTML. Yes, you can have a style tag, and you can have all the HTML in here. This works as well. But this is not the recommended way of doing things. I would not recommend, but it works. You can do it. Okay, if it is very small piece of HTML, rather than putting into a HTML page, of course, go ahead with this. But even that, to keep the consistency, I would recommend to use something like a template URL and style URL. So okay, in here we have all the views. In here we have all the styles, and here we have the logics. The component will contain all the logics, which it will execute. Okay, so this is a good practice. You follow these things. This is the way of Angular frameworks. It's not something you will find in other frameworks. React has a different approach, but it's the same thing. Okay, if you look at it, React is somewhat similar to this architecture, this pattern, but they are not using class-based ones. They are using function-based one. We'll talk about these things. Don't go there right now, about now. But for now, let's keep it simple. We have this two way of defining components. Okay, first component is something like this: separate HTML file, separate CSS file, and a component like this, a template within the file, and styles and encapsulation. We will talk about this. So at the end, component is something like this. It's going to have a component decorator on top of it, and some selectors, and some metadata about the component, and a name that explains what it does. Okay, so this is the simplest form of application. Still creating. Okay, we have created. So we need to see this in action. We have created this thing. We can't read anything out of this. What we'll do is we will serve this application. We will run this application and see. The command is nxserve. Okay. Okay, I have to be in the directory. Send nxserve. Where your project is, go here, go there, and hit serve. I think I have to define a project nxserve dill agro. I have to give the project name as well, because as I mentioned earlier, NX can contain more than one project. So you have to be specific what project that you're going to serve. So nxserve dill agro. Dill agro is the project that we're going to be serving. Okay, so I will be serving here, and if they say go to localhost 4200 to see this application. Let's go there. Since this is a web application, there you go. So this is the application that we have created. Hello there, welcome dill agro. If you go in here, the NX welcome component, you might find these things at around here, somewhere around here. It's too complicated for me at this point. So yeah, there you go. Some HTMLs are there. We will we will be seeing this. But say, for example, I want to remove this section. I don't need this hello there will let go to be shown. I can just go to the app component, and if I remove this same welcome component and save it, there you go. The page is empty because we removed that component. It's no longer rendering in our HTML application. It's gone. Okay. The route outlet is there, but it is not doing something unless we have routing enabled. Route outlet is not going to do anything. But say, for example, I want to say simple HTML. Let's say hi, hello, SENG 412 something. I can't remember the code. People, PEOPL. And there you go. You have the HTML rendered around here. And that this is very instantaneous. Normally, when I do development, what I do with my lab, my Mac, I put these things side by side, so I can easily do the coding on one side and preview on the other side. So that is kind of a cool thing. You guys can also do that. So I can say, so we have the hello message, hello people. You can see that it is rendering as that as well. So basic CSS works just like this. So if I say class and I say title, okay, it's not going to show anything because we haven't defined the title class. But as I mentioned earlier, this HTML component is styled by this HTML component SCSS file. So if I do title class in here, okay, this is the class definition of the CSS. And if I say the color should be, let's say 6990. And there you go. The title, the color of this title is going to be the same as the defined ones in here. Okay, so one other setting I would like to enable in my workspace: format on editor, format on paste, and format on save. So whenever I'm saving the file, it automatically gets formatted. So it's easy for me. So if I hit save, you can see it is getting nicely arranged, which I like. So basic CSS works and everything in here works. So you can do whatever the HTML knowledge things that you guys have found in here. It will work without any issue. Say, for example, let's say we want to have a UL, okay, and LI number, let's say Angular, and we have React, LI, React. There you go. So all the HTML stuff, it works out of the box. Okay, you don't have to do anything on that. And we will talk about this route outlet in a bit. So I just want to emphasize on things that we have done. And what I will do is I will no longer need this NX component. We will create our own components. We'll see how we do that. So I'm going to delete this one. As soon as I'm deleting, I'm getting an error because within the app component, I have used that. I have imported that. So I'm not going to import it anymore. I will remove that and the error goes away. Okay, so I have to delete it from existence. Right. So this is the basic application that we have created. Now, of course, one file I missed is this aspects app component spec file, which is the unit test section of the application, which also have dependencies to the deleted component that we had right now. It is no longer there. So I created remove that one as well. So the testing is running. I'm not gonna follow and test as this point. We'll just close it. Okay. Anything up until this point, guys? You guys, okay, I am a little bit confused on this section. Anyone have any questions? Just let me know, so I can, before I proceed, I would answer gladly. Anything that you guys need to know? So I'll keep my desktop like this. So since it is mobile friendly development, the viewport that you are seeing in here is perfectly aligned with mobile viewport most of the time. Any questions up until this? Yes. Any questions, guys? Chaturanga, Imasha.
No, sir.
Okay. Everybody good? Let me need. Nandu, are you good? Okay. Hope everybody got the basic setup, and we will see a little bit with Angular, and we'll move on. Okay. The next thing that we'll be working with is what we call in Angular, it's called the property binding. Okay, how we can bind something in here, and we will see some directives and such smaller things. We will not go into all details around all the things, but small things that you guys find really interesting. So rather than saying hello in here, let's say I want to show a variable coming from somewhere. Okay, so I want to say, okay, hello, my name. Hello, my name. That's it. Okay, hello, and I want to say a name. Okay, not a hard-coded one, but something coming from logic. Okay, so I can do that by defining variables in the app components. See if you guys can remember, the HTML is binded to this component. So whatever this component can contain will be reflected on this HTML. So if I want to use a variable called name, and I will assign it to Randika, and I can assign, I can use this variable named Randika within my HTML component. To use that, I have to use this mustache braces. Okay, mustache braces in the sense 2 curly braces in here, and whatever the variable that you need to access, you can put it in there. Okay, simple as that. So you can access anything there. And say, for instance, I have a list of things, the Angular React thing. I want to make these things as something that to render in a list view. Okay, so we will create something called frameworks. Okay, and we will have Angular. We will have React, and we will have Vue.js, whatever the frameworks that you want to show. So I want to render those things in a list like this. Okay, so I can use some built-in directives. Okay, we call these things directives, like looping stuff, showing if and else condition. So I want to loop something. So I want to loop that. So what I need to do is I will use a directive called ng4. Okay, ng4, and I will say let, this is the syntax of the ng4, framework of frameworks. Okay, so what I'm telling in here is that let a single framework of frameworks. Okay, we have a variable called frameworks in here. I'm gonna loop it through. I'm gonna loop it the frameworks variable. Okay, this is the variable that I'm going to be looping. Make sure this is an array or something similar. A collection should be in an array. And one of these items, okay, out of this array, one of these item will be let known as framework. Mind the S in here. So the plural form, this is the variable that we're going to be iterating, and one single item, we will call it as framework. Okay. Now I want to show each and every framework here. So rather than showing Angular, I will show framework. So you guys can see that framework is one element out of this frameworks library. So first element, first time when you are showing, the framework variable will be Angular. The second time it will be React. The third time will be Vue. Okay. But if you look at in here, we don't see that list, but we see an error in here, ng4. ng4 directive is a template. So ng4 is the common module, and you haven't imported in here. That's something true. So ng4 is a directive built into Angular, but it is unless you import that component, it is not going to import itself. So we have to import this directive, and how we can import that? It is based on, it is on the something called common module. Okay, that is coming from Angular core. If you import it from Angular core, you will have the ng4 directives, and you can work with that. Okay, remember in here, these things is a little bit different than the others, but I have seen the latest changes approval process for Angular. They have gone for some things, something different, like a React or Vue.js kind of syntax. But for now, we have to stick with, as of now, we have to stick with something like this. So we will be repeating a list item like this. So we can see it in real action like this. If I right click on my Chrome and hit inspect, and if I go to inspect element section, and if I click the component, and I will go down my styling, and you can see that it is rendering a list item one by one. Okay, so in here you can clearly see that all the things that we need to render this application is done, but in syntax it is something like this. Okay, really simple, really really easy to do something like this. Okay, so we can use this directive to loop. There are built-in directives that which you guys need to look into, ng-if, ng-for, and there are a bunch of ng-switch case, a lot of things. Please have a look around it. Because given the limited time, I'm not going to go each and every directives, but use cases you will see in action. Okay. All right. So we learned how to loop an array. Okay. Next thing is data binding. We have done the two-way data binding, and conditional binding also we can do. Okay. So we can have something like actions. Say, for example, let me have a button. Okay, and I will say change my name as a button action. Okay. Now, if I want to, if I click on this, I need to change my name to my full name. Okay. So I need to happen something when I click on this button. Okay. So we have something called event binding. Okay. To bind an event with this button, I have to know what is the event that I'm going to be listening into. I will be listening into click event. So in Angular, we use this two round braces to signify an event, or we call this as output from the button. The event we are looking for is click. So on click, what function should happen, or what should happen? Okay, so we can call a function, or we can change something here. Let me show something simple. I want to change the variable name to something else. So I can say on click, I can say name equals let's say Okay, so when I click on my button, there is a variable called name. Okay, name should be Hapuwada. Let's see whether it's happening. There you go. The variable has changed. Okay, we can do it inline or we can do it in the function. Let's do something like this. Rather than do it in inline, I can say on click. Okay, there is a function called on click, but you will see that there is no function in app component. So you have to create it. So in here, I will create on click function, then the error goes away, as you can see. And while what should happen on this click, I can say this name should be, say, which is my middle name, Priyadarshana. Don't laugh. My grandfather gave it. I don't know why. There you go. So I can do either via a function, I can change this, or I can do it inline, as you have seen earlier on. Okay, these are going event binding, what you can do when something happens. So these are like the basic stuff that you can do. You can play around. And any questions up until this? Because after this, we will be going down in a huge journey. That's why. Any questions? No? Yes, any questions, guys? Let me know. All good? Everybody can understand event bindings and variable binding. Supuni? Chaturanga? Pasan?
I'm good, sir.
Okay, so let's see. All right. Do you guys need a 5-minute water break? Or shall we continue? You're too excited. Anyone who need 5-minute water break? No one? Okay. Okay, you guys can drink water whenever you like, right? Okay. Right, let's dive in then. Just give me a second, guys. I'll be back. Ah, okay. Sorry about that. So we talked about these things in terms of Angular, but we'll talk the same things. It's going to be like something similar in React as well. All right. So next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna make things look a little bit nicer. Okay. I don't want the CS to be like this. I really don't like that. So we'll be using something like a good UI library. Personally, there are a lot of out there, but in this tutorial or in this lecture series, as usual, I will be using Angular materials. I don't know, I'm quite obsessed with it. And it's easy to use if you guys like, but it's not limited to Angular material at any point. You can use anything you like. Okay, we'll just use for the easiness of this. Okay, so I'll just add to Angular material, add Angular material to this project. It's quite simple. Where is my terminal, which I used? Not that one. This one. No, I don't know. I'll take a terminal out of this. It's makes easy for me. So I can say there are commands like that makes things easy to add. The ng command is something from Angular CLI. We can use that. Let's see whether it's still usable. ng at Angular material. ng command is not found. So I will say nx. I'm not sure nx is happy to do that. Nx is built on top of Angular. Yeah. Using nx to run NCME deprecated will be removed solution. Okay, not to worry about that. Natively support nx. Instead, we recommend using npm install Angular material and Angular material ng. Would you like to run command? Yes. So you can either do this or you can do this manually. So I would like to run this. Yes. And what it does is it's gonna install Angular material. And it's gonna add the Angular material things to my application, the application that we right now created. Okay, so it's once it is done, Angular material add will ask some things with you guys. I'm not sure whether it is really clear. This is asking for a theme to apply by default. I will use a custom one. Would you like to set up a global styling? I would say yes. And would you like to have animations? I would include and enable the animations. That's gonna always help me with that. And I think Angular material NBX, something went wrong. I'm not sure. Project name is required. I think when we are running the npmx command, it is not working as expected. Let me check check one thing. Project name required. I had the same issue. I can't remember. ng@. This is where project name. Not in here, don't think. Workspace. Okay, I think I need to add project in here. Let's see. I'm not sure it's gonna work, but we have to try. Since there is going to be multiple project, I will say project Dil Agro for now. Yes, let's run this. I will use the custom theme. I would like material, include animations. Still it's giving me errors. GR is not happy with that. Let me check whether I have. NX workspace. NX and PMAT. Let's try this command npmx ng add project name. It should work. Dil Agro. I'll use the custom. Yes, include. Hope this works. Okay, got it. So this is the command that you should run, just in case. I will have that in the chat for you guys. So yes, not. Okay, I think everyone is meeting. I will send this. Okay, so you guys can add Angular material. So what it basically does is it's gonna update bunch of files, especially the style.css file, where it will the style.css file is one important file. I think we did not speak about it, but let me speak about it. So the style.css file containing the global stylings for our application. So any application within here can have can be shared among the whole application. If you share, if you put any styling in the app related one, it's only going to be for that application only. But for now, but if you put something in style.css, that's going to be shared in the whole application, throughout the application. Okay, so even though there is like a bunch of things happened in here, it's basically defining a theme. Okay, Angular material has something called themes, where you can define different color schemes. In here we have primary, accent, and warning. For primary, we are using primary color. In here, Dil Agro primary is indigo color. You can change it as you like. Say for instance, if I don't like indigo, I can change it to something like purple. Okay, there are certain names that you can use. Not all the colors are there. And for the accent color, that is in the secondary color, we can use something like not the pink, but the green one. Okay, it's up to you. You can mix and match. For warning, I would just go with red one. Okay, but in here you can't see that much of difference unless the title is changed. The title font is a little bit changed. Other things will be something quite similar, quite not that changed. Okay. But we'll see in action how we can change those things. Okay, so we have introduced Angular material. By introducing, we have introduced the typography, the fonts, and everything into here. So you can obviously see the font type has changed right now. So we will utilize some of the Angular material stuff in here. For example, I need a page. Within this page, I need to create a simple login. Okay, obviously I'm gonna create a form where it has a username and a password. Then by entering username and password, I can redirect to an admin page or a separate page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a simple page. Okay, the simple page that I'm going to create is going to be within my application. I go to my app around here. I will create a new folder and I will call these pages. It's up to you. It should be pages. You can have model, whatever your name suggests. As long as you can understand, you can organize these things. Keep it that way. Keep it simple. Okay. All right. So I'm going to create a page and I am going to use something called a generator. Okay. You can't create all these things by hand. I will create a generator. So to do that, within the page, I will right click and there is something called NX generate. Okay. This is a plugin. If you don't have this NX generate command in your application, go to VS Code, go to extensions and have the NX, something like that. There's this extension called NX console. Make sure you install that. Then you get the right click NX generate command. Okay, we'll be generating everything. We don't create files from our hand like we were in 2000. So we will create NX generate and it gives us a lot of options. All the generators that is registered with NX, there are a lot of things that you can do. Even pre-templates are there. You can create a navigation, you can create a dashboard. Those kind of, a lot of interesting stuff is going on here. Okay, but for now, I'll be creating a simple component. Okay, I will create a component and make sure you are selecting the right component. It's coming from not Angular or not from NX, but Semantic Angular. Okay, you have to select the things. These are separate components. We can use the NX Angular component as well, but I like to stick with Semantic Angular component. And you have to give a name for this. Since this is going to be a login, I will call this login component, and it will do a dry run. That means it will try to run. It will not create, but it will try to run it and see whether there are any errors. Seems to be there are errors. So I would just go and tweak some more options in here. And I would select SCS as the styling, otherwise it will create a CSS style. Still, it is not working. And one thing I can do is like we can select inline styling, like we have seen in the components, we can do it inline, but I don't like that thing. So I would simply go and create the standalone component. Okay, so in here you can see the green lights. It will create these files, and once I hit generate, then and only that component is created. Now, if I go in here, you can see, okay, it has created in the wrong directory under apps. I want in page, I will just move it. Okay, move it. Right. So under here, I have created a page and it says login page works. And it has a CSS file and have a test file and a simple component. That's it. Okay. So now this component is created. Now I want to show that component in here. Okay, I need to show this component within my app component in here. So basically what I can do is I can import this component, this login component within my app component like this. If I go to import section, I will say login component as an import, add an import, still not showing because we have just imported it. We haven't set the selector in here. We have the selector in here and we have put it in the HTML. There you go. Now what happens is the login component will render out in its place. Make sure you have to import that, otherwise there is no connection between those two components. To make that connection, we will import into the app component, and the login component has a selector like this. Make sure to add that selector within our app component itself. So it works. So I like this thing, but there are certain things that we need to do in order to work this application a routable one. Okay, this is not a routable one. Let's create a routable one first. Let's create another page and we will route around these two and see how we can do it in a proper way. Okay, so next thing I would do, I would create admin page. Okay, there is a login page. After the login page, I will be redirected to an admin page. So I will have two routes. So I will create another page in under my page directory. I will right click next generate, and I will type component, select semantic components, and I will call this admin component. Okay, it can have multiple children, but right now I will call it as admin component. As I did earlier, styling, I would use the CSS and I would make this standalone component. Okay, now I can generate and it should show. Yeah, again, I have created in the wrong place, not sure why, but I'll just move it to the pages. Okay, move it. Where did it go? Okay, yeah. So I have two components now. Under pages, I have the login page or login component or an admin component. So if I want to use the admin component in here, what I have to do is I will import in the import section for the admin component, and I have to select the selector in here and put it in here. Make sure I don't have values. So yeah, so I have two components. One is the login and the other one is admin. So these two are showing perfectly. The problem is we will not show those two components at the same time. Okay, when you are logging, if you are showing the admin component, that is not the how the intended behavior is. Okay, the intended behavior is something different. Either we show login, after the login, we need to load the admin one. When the admin one is shown, we don't no longer need to show the login one. Okay, so that's where routing comes place. So ideally what we will say is we will say, okay, for the initial part, when somebody is coming to the application, let's show them the login. And once they have login, or when they have authenticated whatever they have done, let's move them to the admin section. Okay, so we will write two routes. One is for the initial one, and the next one is for the admin one. So in here, if you take a closer look, if somebody comes to this initial web URL, let's show the login one. And if somebody go to the admin the port /admin, we will show the admin admin component. So that is our two routes, two pages. So let's make that happen. And to do that, first we will remove these two components. This is not the ideal way of doing these things. Okay, and we will remove this. So we have something called router outlet here. So router outlet is something like the component that we need to show is replaced by this router outlet. So for example, we want admin component to be shown in the place of router outlet. If we write a simple router, we can show it in here. And if you want to show login in place of the router outlet, we can direct that login component and replace with the router outlet. So in order to do that, we need to write routes. Okay, without routes, it's not gonna show which one to show. So the router outlet is coming from this module, router module, which handles routing within the Angular application. And by default, we have something called this app routes. Okay, this app routes is where we're gonna write our routes. Okay, pay close attention to this. Whatever the routes that we're going to be written in here will be replaced by this router outlet. Okay, let me do one demonstration. I will go to the route outlet, and this it can contain more than one route. So I will have array, and if I start an object, and if I say the path, okay, the path in the sense which URL it should come and which component it should be replaced. Okay, so in an empty path would be suggesting it will be the URL without anything, like this one. This is the empty path. Okay, if somebody comes to this URL, there are two things that you can do. You can load your component, or you can load your other component. So right now, with the initial page, we want to show our login component. This is our logic. So if you come to this part, load the component, or the components that we'll be using is the login component. Okay, now you guys can see whenever somebody is coming to the initial path, the component that we're going to be showing is the login component. Now what will happen? The router outlet, these routers know we have come to this empty space, and the empty URL is empty URL, so empty path will be replaced by the login component. And in the app component, you have something called route outlet. This router outlet will be replaced by the login component. So if I had something in here, h1 high, so this won't get affected. Okay, login works only replace this router outlet. Okay, and remember, you can have more than one route outlet if you have multiple routes. Okay, you can have two route outlets, but in this scenario, we'll be sticking to the same. But if you have a complex situation where you need multiple routes, you can also do that. We call that name routes. But in this scenario, we'll just simply change only one section, which is going to be this route outlet. You can have more route outlets in the bottom, like a footer. I think footer is not spelled like that. Footer. Okay, so you can see that only this section is get replaced. Okay, now we can do the same thing in here. If I go to the route section, rather than app component, if I say admin component, and it works. Okay, it's changed. But right now our requirement is, okay, we have the login component and it says login works. But for some reason, if I say I have a path and I want to load, the path is called admin. When I go to admin section, I need to load the component admin component. Okay, right now, what we have done is we have introduced a new one. This one, yeah. So right now we have two parts. One is the empty one. The other one is admin one. If it is empty, you can clearly see it is empty. It is showing the login works. But if I add admin as the route we have defined